Legal expert and commentator Mpumelelo Zikalala joins us now to enlighten us a little bit more about this case. Thanks very much indeed for joining us. Always good to talk to you. 21 co-accused. There was a pleading process. Take us through that. What does that all mean?
It means that that's when you're given an opportunity as the accused to state whether do you plead guilty or not guilty. In certain instances, you are allowed to provide an explanation to your not guilty plea, in which you give an explanation. I think it's section 115 in terms of the Criminal Procedure Act, which, by the way, the Criminal Procedure Act is the Bible which is going to be followed when dealing with this particular case. So the accused in this case, they were given an opportunity to say, here are the charges as per the indictment. There are huge or lots of charges that are there. Can you please give us an explanation? Do you know these charges or you don't? If you say you're not guilty, then the state will then move on to bring out the first witness into the witness box, who is going to help in proving all the elements that must be proved by the state in order to get a guilty plea. I must mention again at the start of the trial that we must also put it in the back of our minds that what the state wants to prove all the elements that are there as they must be found guilty beyond reasonable doubt, meaning there must be no other explanation other than the one brought in by the state, that the people that are in the accused box are indeed guilty of the crimes in which are listed under the indictment.
All right. And 21 co-accused, 22 in total. Does everybody have their own representation, or how does it work when you've got 21 people in the dock?
It does, but what you may find is that two or three individuals or those co-accused would have one legal representatives. And why they would have that in certain instances is that it would be the separate legal entity. For example, it would be the PTY Ltd company and the director that is there. So they would have one individual that is there. Why do we separate them? Just remember that the separation of the legal entities or the separate legal entity which is then applied to a company, it means that whenever that we need to try it, we need to try it on its own and be able to present evidence as to how it participated in this type of charges. Now, we're also dealing with companies here within which monies would have allegedly been paid into, and from those particular companies, the monies would have gone to either politically inclined or even politicians. That's the racketeering part in which would then come in, and that's the part which will have to prove the Prevention of Organized Crime Act elements that are required in order to have a conviction in this particular case. So you may find that the actual warm bodies in this particular trial, maybe they are like, let's say 10 or 12, but it's still a very big number for me if you consider the amount of legal representatives that are there.
And so this is likely to be quite lengthy, this trial, given the number of accused and each having an opportunity to bring witnesses and cross-examine.
Yeah, definitely. The first problem that you're going to find, if there's one accused who's not at court on any particular day, or if there's one legal representative who's not at court at one particular day, it means that the trial cannot proceed for that day. Now, just imagine the amount of time which may be lost if any of them were to get COVID, for example, be involved in certain family matters, maybe a death or a funeral in the family, you can't proceed on that one. So logistically, that's the type of challenges in which we are facing. But once the trial starts, when it comes to cross-examination, when it comes to examination in chief and re-examination, all those individuals in their legal reps must be given ample opportunity in order to deal with it. Not to mention the fact that there's also the interpretation time which must then be allocated, which then means that this particular trial, if we were to estimate, I don't think it's going to be completed within the next 5 years, for example. It may even take even longer, depending on how the parties within this particular trial are dealing with each other, the level of professionalism which is going to be there, the need for agency so that they don't waste time in terms of even the questions that they are going to ask, and to make sure that none of the accused engage in any unreasonable delays. But nonetheless, there is a section within the Criminal Procedure Act, which is section 342(a), which deals with unreasonable delays and asks certain questions in which the results of that may be, let's separate these trials, or let's separate the co-accused so that we're able to get the ball rolling, at least get a few convictions and get the others to follow at a later stage.
All right, and a bit of clarity, because sometimes we confuse charges and counts. So, you know, I'm hearing language being spoken, thousands of charges, and I'm just thinking that can't be correct. We're talking about counts. Explain the difference.
Now, you would find that a charge in terms of POCA, for example, the Prevention of Organized Crime Act, would be one charge. But the number of counts that are there would be the number of instances in which transactions have taken place. So if there are a number of transactions that took place from one account to the other, those will be regarded as individual counts. Why is that important? Let's remember that this is a legislated crime. So at the end of the day, there are prescribed sentences which are there. For example, in this one, they would say it's either a life sentence or a fine. I think it runs into the millions of rands. So the state is looking to say, look at the number of transactions that have taken place or the number of counts that have taken place. If you are found guilty, we want the court to provide the maximum sentence that can be there. In this case, it could be even a life sentence due to the number of times in which you've engaged in this particular unlawful activities. Hence why the concentration or the importance of having as many counts as possible, so that at the end of the day, it may increase the chances of you getting a higher sentence if you are indeed found guilty.
So I suppose one of the hurdles is to prove that Mayor Zandile, her influence was what enabled a lot of these things to happen. And I suppose that's quite a tough hurdle unless a signature or something is signed that's given to someone with a specific instruction.
But it must be separated into a number of tranches. Let's start with the signature. So you first investigate, is the person that has signed really the individual that is supposed to sign? Were they influenced by any sort of things? If the answer is yes, then you're halfway there. But the most important one is the transaction which appear in your bank account. If you have a certain money that have been deposited, you must be able to answer and say, I've been paid, for example, this 50,000 rands because it comes from this particular individuals for this basis. Now, not everyone is going to give you a loan just for the sake of giving you a loan. And even if it's a soft loan, you don't have to pay it. At the end of the day, you have to prove some sort of relationship that existed before and some sort of transactional history behind the two of you. Now, if you are going to keep accepting monies, I'm not saying this is in any way the evidence which does exist, but that's how these type of matters are usually investigated or prosecuted. Then sort of the shift or the burden of proof will change indirectly to the receiver of the money to explain why they're receiving large sums of money in their bank accounts, whether directly or indirectly. Why do they have certain assets in which, for example, if you look at the money in which they earn in their salaries, they are not able to support the lifestyle that they are living. Then you must be able to ask yourself, where are you getting the money to buy the Porsche cars? Where are you getting the money to buy the expensive clothes? And also to have cash on hand, which you must have known that some of these individuals, their assets were taken away and frozen by the police during the investigation stage. So at the end of the day, the state then shifts the burden of the Prevention of Organized Crime Act, shifts the burden of proof from the state to the accused, in terms of saying to the accused, show me how you've acquired all this wealth and then I would let you go. If you can't do that, then it only leads me to one conclusion, that this is wealth that has been acquired from illicit gains. This is wealth that has been acquired from criminal activities that you have either directly participated in or indirectly. The indirect participation may also mean influence. I sit on a particular committee. I know that Mr. Ndoro is a service provider in terms of media services. So I will then influence and say, you as a signature holder, sign this particular tender so that he is able to benefit. And in return, there's a certain portion of amount which will then come back to me. If I can't prove why I've been paid by Mr. Ndoro this particular amount, it then means that there must have been some sort of illicit transaction that has taken place. There was racketeering that was there. We are running a money laundering machinery. Our sole intention of being then exercising our power was that we were able to make money at the end of the day. So these are the type of questions in which they'll need to answer during this particular trial.
Okay, attorney at law, Mpumelelo Zikalala, always a pleasure talking to you. I'm pretty sure we need to fasten our seatbelts. This is going to take quite a while. Thanks so much indeed for setting it up for us.
Thank you very much for hosting.
Thank you. All right, that's attorney at law, Mpumelelo Zikalala, giving us a bit of background, setting up actually this trial, which should likely it'll be quite a long one, but we'll be covering it for you.